Thinking of doing it this weekend.
Okay.
Also because whenever I try to start on it, for example, the GW sample OData, right? So I got my laptop back, and so I'm trying to again use that OData. I'm not getting all the multiple fields that you are getting when I'm trying to select it on my end. It only shows like business partner ID and then one another column. It's not giving like four or five extra column on that. So anyway, I have to figure it out. So I thought I'll do it when I get my
Uh,
off time.
sure, sure. So you can probably make sure the data is available. So see, we are having I think 4 or 5 entities within this. So if there is limited set of data, you can probably try for some other set. So business partner, like, say you should be able to see these many entities in this. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm able to see that, but when I copy that URL SAP S5 all the way through GW sample underscore basic, right, and then put it into that Visual Studio, right?
Okay.
Um, so Visual Studio, that's that application
Correct.
generator. It shows that a link. I put that in, and then I click on next. After logging in and everything. Then when we get the fields there, right, to select,
Mm-hmm.
like select the business partner
Understood.
set, and then another column to select. I only see two fields there. You
Understood.
have like five fields. I only had two fields. So
And
I
okay.
don't understand like
That
every.
that could
Yeah.
be one simple case where the you selected field could be like some see in this business partner, if you have selected the same business partner, yet you might have used in this case, if you see, we have used company name. If you use company name, there are like lots of records. It could be like you the selected record. Maybe if you have selected some record which is very few records are there. Like what I mean is like instead of company name, if you have selected something else, some phone number or some other
Right.
new.
Yeah. That. So I was carefully trying to follow exactly like usually I use the video to kind of go through the class one more time so I can do it at on my own pace. So I
Okay,
just did exactly how you were trying to plug it in, except that in my case it didn't show that
sure.
fields. So I thought I'll try to troubleshoot it some at my end, and then if I cannot, then I have to reach out.
Okay, sure. Let me know because it is like publicly available data only because we are
Yeah,
using ES, right? So it will be
yeah,
same for you as well as for me. So
yeah.
whatever
And
data.
believe me when I say this, right? It's just weird at my end.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm always like this. I've always get something that nobody else have ever received.
It will be fine. Even when we are trying to do one of the other things will be stuck. It's see without error, no application will be. It's not like it will not be smooth, right?
I
Even
mean,
when I
at
do.
least in my case, I'm copying, right? Somebody's doing it. I'm trying to just mimic it. It-
Correct.
Even then, I'm stuck. Anyway,
See,
but I'll figure it out. I'm going to
sure.
definitely try and figure it out. Um,
So I have tried to create one more scenarios. So that's the reason even most of the application when I try demonstrate, I'll always have one Git which is working one which I'll try to present it because it always may not go the smooth right. See, while I try to do, maybe even I tend to even a slight comma or semicolon whatever it's gone wrong application we have to try to figure out what's the mistake out there. So there could
hmm,
be many things why the data may not come. See, it could be some case. See, the maybe the typing somewhere. It could be if you use some sorter. See, by default if you use some sorter, and if sorter has a value of some field, then if it sorts, maybe if it filtered out all the data and you could get only two records when that could be possible. So by default, the code selects with some sorter, default sorter.
hmm.
Okay, let me just quickly. Uh, so here, if you see the sorter, so if you have selected some sorter when you say based on some particular ID or filter ID, etc. So if it might have filtered based on certain criteria, and it could be having if you select some data or something, or maybe in those cases also the data could be limited. So it may not be always a wrong or something, but it could be other possibilities as well. So today let me uh, uh, we'll try to understand a couple of things. Let it run once. Let's see it's running. So deployment is one point we have to try for this exercise, and
Yeah.
quick understanding of a couple of other things as well are there. So here, I try to use different layout altogether, and if you see, we have used this sorting, filtering, etc. Uh, we have given it nice. You see, this all are like fragment itself. So how we have the fragments, etc. So those things, and instead of full screen layout, how you use table, etc. Now I try to present in a different layout altogether. If you see, we have the same M table now with lots more fields, and then we try to have know, sorting, filtering, search, etc., and all other things. So I try to use different layout, full screen layout. We have tried it. So same things with more other features, etc. We are trying to add it like. So these are like common fields which we use it, etc. And if you see, if you notice, there are like some uh, color indicators, etc. So these all are different attributes of not only table, like different concepts now so far which we have used, like fragments, using fragments now, having dialogue, etc. And we have something called formatters. So formatters are a way dynamically we can interpret different values in different way. Okay, so we'll try to see some of these concepts, and always the fallback resource for you to look at is this particular responsive table. So everything whatever we discuss, so all will be available either in a different features, or in the API you'll be finding, or you'll be finding more further features also you can add based on the references, etc. Okay. So here in any of the application, each of the application they'll try to explain one or the other concept. So you can check for these different concepts, etc. Here, if you see dialogue, etc., they have explained here, and then see this is what merge. If we have to merge, etc., also this is how it looks like, merge duplicates, etc. This is a one attribute property. If we set similar items will be grouped. So if you see, instead of multiple times repeating, the supplier it got grouped. So this we call it as merge property. So this you can find lots of features here, and based on each of this thing activity, we can try to understand how to add these features. So combining all these features, I try to add it. So this is called as personalization, where you want to hide certain columns. So you can select which column to show, and then only those columns will appear. So we are trying to add all these features into one single scenario. So these kind of all common features, etc., are you will be able to find it here. Okay. So let's see how we actually got this application as such, right? Okay. So first and foremost, we have this we call it as master detail layout. So when we select a new project, etc. So first and foremost thing we have to do is like same wizard. So you can select one service, and then we can select a template instead of empty template. Previously we selected I think list report we have selected. or this is a flexible layout where it's master detail kind of layout we'll get it. So anywhere we can try to use and apply all the concepts of table. So here in this case you can select flexible layout. So once you select flexible layout, then we'll get this particular output this way. So under freestyle, now if I select this particular SF here master detail application, so this old name is master detail and a new way as per what they're calling was flexible layout. Okay. So this I have used it. So previously we tried with this. Now I'm just trying to use a different template. The same concepts, everything. So once I select that master detail layout, so we get two different pages out there. So if you see, there is a master view and there's a detail view. So the master, as the name suggests, so everything which is on the left is master. So the moment we select it, the corresponding details would be, on the header we'll find more details about this particular selection. And in the below we are classifying into three different categories like supplier, delivery status, and customer details kind of, right? So what I tried to do here is I use different tables in different tabs. So I use some tabs. This is M table, and whereas this is our grid table. If you notice the there's a grids out there, and we can resize, etc., collapse, etc., and we have multiple features. And I try to place two different tables as well. So in IconTabBar, in the same application, I try to use two different controls, M table as well as grid table. So M table looks this way, whereas grid table looks this way. Okay. So if you see some more here, we have something called, right. So I have used a fragment called view settings dialog. In this, if you see, we try to present the template, how we use like sorting, filtering, etc. There are like different ways of doing it. So we can have different sorting, searching, etc. as well. So, so this what are we are using this icons, right? So you can use a name as well. So we can write a sort, or even stuff. We can, if you use icon, this is how it will appear. So this is like sort icon, this is filter icon, this is grouping. So same thing, if I use a text, it will appear. So if you see, no matter what we select, I try to place a single fragment. In this fragment, we used a segment button. So segment buttons, etc., will allow us to place this way. So all the three functionalities in the same dialog we are trying to put. If you see this, if you click on this, it comes to sorting. If I click on this, it directly automatically comes to this particular page called filtering. And if you select this, it directly comes to grouping. So they're like standard property. So we have something called view settings dialog. So this is one property, view settings dialog, right? So if you want to use such behavior, so this is where this is a control which allows us to play around with all the features of sorting, filtering, etc. Okay, so this is a control which we right now I have used it to get this particular functionality. If you notice it, all we had to do was specify which all fields we wanted to for sorting, etc. So in this case, if you see, so by default, whatever we want, so customer ID, gross amount. So if which are fields we have, so we can add the fields as an elements here. So here, if you see gross amount, customer ID, so we can add as many fields we want, and each of the items in sort items, whatever we add, will be added automatically to this particular area. Now, all I haven't defined the I8 in files names, so it appears this way. Define it. Customer ID, gross amount. So you can define over there. So if you see, we got customer ID, gross amount. So whichever field we wanted to sort, etc. So if you want to you don't want to give sorting, etc., based on certain field, etc. If we do not add it, it will not appear in this list. So ascending, descending, etc., they can select, and they can select this field, and they can directly select the value. So now it gets automatically sorted, etc. So if you want to add one more field, all you have to do is this is like standard code. Every time whenever you want to implement this functionalities, all you have to specify is which fields you wanted to sort by. So you can add one more field and then you can add it. So this is how your sorting will be, fields will be visible on the UI. Similarly, filter items as well. So you can add each of the, filter parameters. So based on which you want to filter. So these are like, if you select the field as such, so based on the field, so we can maintain whether all the items which are, in this case amount less than 100 and greater than 100, if I want to filter, I can filter it. So just the descriptions etc, we can, I just added the logic, so we can automatically use, can go to 18. Amount. Say gross amount 10. Now if you see, we got field by gross amount, and we can either less than or greater than etc properties. So this is the same search logic. If you previously how you have search logic, the same, we just given a name called filter by, and here I have used greater than and less than property operator, and then I'm trying to set the field. So it's just a cosmetic way we are trying to present in a nice fragment dialog, and we are trying to group the features as filter etc. So all this logic how we have written, I'll just show you. But in the view, if you can understand, so if whichever item we want to add, all we need to do is we just have to add one more parameter as such. And same is the case for grouping as well. So what I'll do is quickly change. So grouping is, it's in this case greater than less than. If you have done, this grouping will be slightly different. Where if I select specific amount, so all the results which are having the same amount will be grouped. If you see gross amount 20 or less, so all products which are having less than 20 etc will be grouped. So this is meant for, categorizing similar products etc. So this is grouping is one such feature, and we can change the gross amount.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, yes, yes.
So, this is like a general question. Do when we are ready to implement Fiori project, right? Um, do you do we ever ask for functional specifications to be created?
Yes,
Let's say
yes.
we want to implement time card, right? Timesheet. Do we ever ask for specification?
We definitely have, functional, see, we have two things. So like any SAP project, we need a technical design as well as a functional design document as well. Okay. So functional design document will outline us what all features they're expecting from us. Okay. So when the business is using it, maybe they could, it could contain Fiori, the way in Fiori how they use, and it can include as well how they use it in GUI codes. Maybe certain cases could be both. So functional document outlines their whole business scope, they'll detail it. And at the same time, technical design document is something which we prepare as well. So which we prepare in the sense, after completion of the project, based on the business design document, functional document is nothing but it tells us what the functional they're expecting from us. So technical design document is one which we prepare, saying that this is where the functionality, this is how we have built the functionality.
But
And
we
if you want,
already have the, let's say, timesheet, right? We already have it in the system and it is up and running. Can they not like refer to the existing timesheet and then kind of make it. So I mean, it is okay if it is a new implementation, right? But so that's why I'm wondering, that is a reasonable ask or a.
Is it like your the timesheet? Is it a standard for your application or is it a custom application?
So the timesheet that we are using already have like um, it's been in use for like 17 years or so.
Okay.
And then now we have Fiori, and we're trying to tell them that, oh, okay, there is Fiori, there's a new way of visualizing time card, right? But then, the developer, if they go and ask for, no, I have to have a functional specification to work on. I was wondering if that is even a reasonable ask.
Yes, we can definitely ask. See, every
Okay.
implementation, if we have it, there could be some document. If it is too old, maybe they may not have, exact form we are expecting it, but definitely
Mm,
they'll have relevant documents of the implementation. See, in
mm,
whatever form. See, it may not be always in a organized functional document. I mean to say, because if it is
mm.
very old, they may not have the copy of it as well. At least they'll share us. What we can do is you can go to simply SC80 and there all the objects you will have it. It's like if we are able to identify the application using semantic object or some other form, if you know the application name BSP, so you can go and directly check out some of the us generally what they do is they put some comments in the code, see who has done it and where the you can find the documents, etc. Okay. So
Mm.
general practice, what we do is when the change has been done, I mean, how it is done. I'll show you a real working scenario as well. Generally, how we, you know, provide some details here. So even from there, you'll come to know certain information, etc. Okay. Most of the, if it is built in separate technology, it may not be, they may not call as functional document, but they'll definitely have some document altogether. It is must and required because without looking at the document, we'll not know what exactly they have built features, etc. By looking at it, we cannot actually assume most of the things.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Uh, Okay, so we have sorting etc. in UI, how to add etc. We are trying to understand. So we know that all we need is we have to specify the fields required, whether it is grouping or sorting or filtering. And in order to define a logic to it now, so we have one option called here. So we'll define an event now. So we know for anything we have to define an event. So we have an event called confirm here. So whenever we select OK there, so that means it will go back and check for this particular logic. So let me go to my controller. So I have to refer to my master controller. So these all are like standard logics I'm saying. If you understand how we are trying to do, you can reuse across all the scenarios. So sorting, filtering, etc. common, and even the M table giving a search field are common. So these are like common features. So here we are trying to create again, all we try to use is always the model properties. So the model we have in this case, like how we had yesterday for the search, we have used filter and filter operator. We have something called sorter as well. So these are like sorter is part of model features. SAP UI.model, the OData model or JSON model which you are using, that's the same library. It has these all features. So if the data is stored in JSON model or OData model, be it any model, we can always use these properties. If you see, we defined this SAP UI.model on top as JSON model. And because the data is in JSON model, using filter, sorter, etc. will make it very easy. Even the grouping for grouping, etc. We are using these particular libraries. So if you see the how the logic has been constructed here, so we are specifying which all items etc are available. So using them like yesterday I specified like we have for this particular event, so we have to go to view settings dialog, and for the confirm what all events we have to go and check there. So in this case can click on API reference, so it will take me to API reference view settings dialog, and then which method we have used. So we have used confirm, so we'll select confirm, and this will take us to which all events are available for us to extract the key inputs. So user is, in this case, user is selecting some value, and so this selection is captured in the event. So which event? So the confirm logic, whatever we are writing, that right, confirm. So in this event they should be captured. So how do we read that they have selected this particular entry, etc., will be known only through this particular event called confirm. So confirm has get source and get parameters. Now if you notice here, we have something called filter items, filter keys, group item. So which are the tab they selected? So based on this get parameter sort item, we'll get sort field what the ordering, ascending, descending, they selected. So this property will give us whether it is sorting, descending, etc., selected, etc. And sort item will tell us which item has been selected as customer ID or group customer ID or gross amount, etc. Likewise we have for grouping, these are the properties. And likewise for the filter we have three properties, these are the three properties. So these properties will try to use it in our logic to retrieve those items. So we are using now get parameters of filter items. So which are the filters they selected, those we are saving in uh, var a filters. So we are taking two arrays, and this is the latest way. You can use a for loop as well, or we can use for each as well. So this is just syntactical difference is just we need not specify boundaries for each. So every item, how many our items are there in this array, it will one by one it will automatically execute. So all we have to write is this way. So we have now which all values are selected, all those items are in filter items. Now each of the selected items we can just try to, using a switch case, we are trying to filter. So same such logic how we have used, we applied a case one. So if one value is selected, which are the field we want to search, the same field. Now in this case I have used gross amount. The same gross amount we can copy. If you are adding one more parameter, etc., which are field you are using it, so we can replace the particular OData binding with the field. So whatever field we are mapping here, the same field we have to try to map it there, getting it right. And the operator, like I said, in this case less than, greater than. So yesterday we have discussed like we can have many operators. So previously we used starts with for such. Now in this case we are using less than and greater than. So this is how we have to specify operator, and the whole filter logic will be auto taken care. So all we are doing is the here selected items. For each item we are trying to search whether it is available or not, and then if it is available, then we are just pushing into a filters value, and then we are trying to assign and we are trying to apply the results to it. So these are like standard way of defining the filters, etc. Okay. So similarly here if you see, these are like this is how we define multiple functions if we are writing it. And in order to make the code look simple, what we do is like, so filter logic, etc., these all are, after it is done, we are trying to call apply sort group. When I say sort, so it will go to the sort function. So this is new function altogether. And if I have to call one more function, all I have to do is this dot, if you say which are the function name, we'll be able to call. If I want to call on selection change, this dot on selection, if I do, it will automatically, after execution of this whole code, it will go to that particular line of code. So this is how we specify mm, uh, multiple functions within a single function. Okay, this is the approach how. So this operator allows us to define the scope. Now in this case, the scope we are asking us to go to this particular you know defined user defined function. So this dot apply group, after execution of all this thing, now it will go to apply sort group. And once again here we are trying to get the parameters path, and we created one more array called a sorters. And like how we used there, we are trying to check if any of the group item we are trying to get for, in the case of filters, it we have here two values we have, right? So key value, using key we will fetch it out. In this case using items we can fetch it, this particular fields. Whereas in case of group, etc., we have something called single value, so using key we can fetch it. So for that we will use get key, etc., value. And then these are like mm, instead of filter we use sorter in this case. So new sorter, we have to specify all the selected values to this. So in this case key is the one selected value, and then we have to give ascending descending value, and then the path. So path, etc., would be captured and will be specified. So the if you, I mean, you can come back to this later, when you understand some more ways of binding, etc. We'll try with. I'll come back to this logics, etc. once again. But these are like standard way. You need not to. All you have to do right now is, if you at all, if you are trying to understand, this is a key important field for you, and these are the boundaries which are important. These are only will change dynamically. Rest of the piece of codes will be the same, no matter which scenario you are trying to redo it, right? So in this case, gross amount is what you need to understand, and in this case, it is everything is picked from the dynamically, so you need not to change any line of code. Okay, so this one line in out of the whole logic, this is the line which makes a difference for sorting. Okay, new sorter, and in this case, the only line which makes difference is line 183. So 183 is the one which does the whole logic of filtering the data, etc. Okay, so rest of the things are we are just trying to pick the values, create some arrays, and we are trying to filter the data, and we are trying to push the data back to the array. So we create an array, and we are trying to just push the final filtered value into this array, and this array we are trying to bind it to the respective location where we wanted to display, in this case the table. So we are trying to bind. Okay, so same is the case with grouping as well. And let me uh, I think I'll just let me show you some other scenario so that it will be more easy to relate. Let's start with some simple logics first. So formatter is a good one to start with. Must think in detail you this. Okay, so we have if you notice it, so this is about sorting, etc., filtering. Now if you notice certain, we have some header section. So for defining header section specifically, we have uh, few ways as such. Okay, let me show you this data manifest. Okay, in the API, if you see, if you type for object, now we have used view settings dialog in our sub control to define filtering, sorting, etc. Right. Similarly, we have something called object. So when you type object, so you'll find certain. If you scroll down, you'll find some display category. In the display category, you'll find lots of you know uh, options. You see something called as object attribute, object header, etc. So these are some of the headings you can call. So heading controls, how we have h1 etc. in HTML, right? So similarly, we have, these are meant for different types of headings, etc. So regular text is simple one, where where all these are where we are using, most of the time they are like text in the table, etc. If you see, most of the time we use text attribute. If you see, most of the time we use text attribute. So text attribute will have only single field binding, and it will not have some rich properties. So when I say rich properties, so we cannot actually add some colors, or you cannot actually add some more additional elements like icons, etc. So in order to have this, objects will have different features. So if you just let me show you um, how it differs. So in this case, this is an object header. So this whole collection is one single control. So we can provide some hyperlinks, we can provide some icons, etc., or color coding, etc. We can provide, and this is one such object header. So if, instead of a plain text attributes, if you want to add, so if we check for certain attributes, you'll understand how it looks. So this is again a basic one. There is one. Yeah, if you see here, this in this case image we could add, and then we could add this one as well. So we'll try to check some reference here. So if you well organized one, if you see, this look all the more mm, the clean way. So you have an image, and you nicely uh, organized and email, etc. We are trying to present it. So any section when they select, so on the detail page etc or header page etc above the table, so generally we use object headers etc. So all these attributes we can use, each of them will have different they are meant for specific thing. So object head is generally meant for these areas. So you could see certain examples here. So these all are different forms where we can try to use. So each of them had different elements. So in this case it's like more details we are trying to adding it. So what all are actually used within this control? If you see object header, by default it's just like how we have defined our text element, we'll just define object header, and it has lots of features called properties. In the property section you'll find something called title, number unit, show markers, marked as flagged, marked as valid. All you need to do is you have to enable these properties, and we'll try to write the logic based on the selection etc on the respective events. So in this case we are just giving the entity set which we have to bind, and these all properties we are enabling it. If you see here, uh, in this case this is a text element, you had this all features, right? So these all are all they automatically applied based on these particular fields etc. Okay. So if you see let me show you object identifier as well. So in this case, hyperlink if you want to give for the title, etc. So object identifier is meant for exclusively for this area, and even some two elements if you want to add. So it will be bold. We can add some bold to it, and regular text we can show in the table. So inside the table we can use it this way, or if you use an head has a header, we can use it this way. Okay, so this is an sample of how object identifier looks like. So likewise we have object status, object number etc for representing various ways of the same attributes. So we have to choose based on our scenario how we want to present the data, and if more complicated etc, object page header title is one more thing. If you see it was very minimalistic here. If you want to add more complex content etc, so lots of actions etc, then we can use this particular controls. If you check out this code again, all it has is object header, and respective buttons are aggregation called actions, and they are trying to add the logic to it. So the structure is very much the same as how we use it. So if too many fields we are trying to add, we are trying to just add different elements to it. So they have complicated the like the object header itself into many folds. So in this case they added lot many buttons etc. In this case it looks so odd, but these are basically all we are trying to add is some buttons etc. Okay. So we can pick up any of these objects headers. I have picked up one such object header, and I have tried to present it in the detail page. If you see here, so I just added a plain simple object header field, and then I used some icon property, and then I added a title field. And to show statuses, we have for the object header has an attribute called status. So what's here, if you have noticed it, so these all are statuses. So this is a main heading, title, icon, and etc. In order to give, we used title property, and in order to add for the object header, we have something called status. So object status, attribute, etc. So if you want to give some color, etc., we use the property called object status. And if you wanted to use something like plain text, generally we use something called object attribute. So these are the two words you need to understand. So they have different features as such. So if you use how it color it got is, we have the property called state in case of object status. Okay, so using state property, if I set to success, warning, etc, they're like standard properties values we have. And if so based on this we dynamically using formatter we can set those values, and when we set those values we'll be able to change the state of it. So in this case it turned into orange. So based on certain criteria, if it is not paid we can show it as not paid, and then we can change the color to not paid etc. So to display such elements we use something called object status, and for showing multiple parameters etc we can use simple attribute called object attribute. So in this case instead of text we can use object attribute, and they'll have different features as well. So for the heading sections, all we use is object keywords. For filtering, etc., what we use is called view settings dialog, right? So this make a short. Uh, so I'll try to simplify this. General features. So for sort, filter, etc., grouping, you can use view settings dialog. This is the simplest one. And for any headings, any type of headings in UIFI, any type of headings when you're using, use all the object properties instead of plain text. We have text attribute will not have more features, so it will allow us to add just text or hyperlink, etc. But whereas object header allows us to add some icons. So in this case, object header, if you want to add icons, we want to add some progress indicators and some buttons, etc., on the heading. So this is a control, go to control. So object header, object attributes, etc., all the controls which starts with object. So we can use all this bunch of fields accordingly. So all are like plain ones. So based on the scenario, we'll use it. So like I said, for this kind of colors, etc., use object status. For specific to hyperlink, if you want to give a title, etc., object identifier. And markers are meant for see some icons we are trying to show out of stock, etc., and if it is locked, etc. So these are like markers, or if not, favorites button, so rating indicator. All these are part of object markers, like user will be able to click on it and will be able to enable those features, etc. And for specific to numbers, currency, etc., we can use object number. This will have different color coding, so we call it as inverted colors. With the same state, it will be on the background, it will be applied, whereas for this it will be applied for the text. So we can use different forms of object number properties as well. Okay, so this is about the control. And the UI mapping is very pretty much straightforward. So once I presented an object header, and once we presented different fields, all we have to specify is the binding, a simple binding. This is simple binding. Whichever field you want to see on the title section, just provide it. Whichever icon you want to see. Suppose you have an image for each of the products. So then we can, instead of icon, we can specify the source of it, the hyperlink, whatever URL we have it, right, in the OData service. We can specify the URL path. So then automatically the product will be applied. So in this case, I do not have an image, so I try to use standard icons. So for every product, it will show the same icon. So instead, you can use different your image as well. So then for object status here, so currency, etc., what I tried to do is I added as an object attribute, and the status would be always one important thing to understand is all the left side elements uh, are if you use object attribute, they'll appear on the left of the header. And if you use something called object status, etc., so status fields, so within the status field, it will appear on the right side, so it will come on the right. So paid, etc., you're able to see, right? So this will come on the right side of it. If you want to have some elements on the right, then we can use within the status attribute, we can specify. And if you want to have on the left, we can use something called object attribute. It's just like which are fields you want, you have to just map those fields, that's it. Okay, this is very straightforward. And multiple fields also, we can, at the same field, if you want to see multiple values, all we have to do is we have to map multiple fields. Okay, so this is how different headings will achieve it. And coming to our table, so table, all I did was same. So it's the same mapping, there's no change in m table mapping, etc. And I used a simple text attributes. So but one key difference was here we are using, instead of table directly, what we are trying to use is an tab structure. So for this tab structure, we have something called one control called IconTabBar. So if you want to achieve any tabs, there are like different tab controllers. So one we have IconTabBar is quite popular among tab controls, IconTabBar. Okay, and we have something called panels, and we have something called object page as well. So object page is one control which will tab structure. So, but most popularly we use IconTabBar. Okay, I think one more section I didn't mention. So if you see for the same section on the heading section, we have something called collapse and expand. Okay, so if you see the same object attribute at the, if you want to use more space of the heading, we can use this below banner to display. If you want to add, like in this case, the complex case where we have seen, right, object head, object title, where you have lots of information. So whenever they scroll down, if you see, only few details are being shown. Whenever they go up, more details are being shown. To achieve this automatic feature of, this is a inbuilt feature of flexible layout, where when they scroll down, we will just show the highlighted, which are the properties we want, only those items will show. Whenever they go up, we'll try to show the complete details. This is inbuilt, we can achieve this. How do we achieve this? In the control itself, we have to specify in two ways. So one, if you see here, notice here, we have two sections here. So I have set up as uh, section as heading section, and header content section I have specified as a separate section. So we use, if you use this layout, within this layout, we have two sections will be created. Okay. The heading section, if we specify all the properties, they'll apply if you scroll down as well. If I scroll down also, all these fields will be applied. Okay. But the one in the header content, so when we use in the header content section, what are fields? Those will be applied only when we try to expand this or collapse this. So when only when we expand it, then only the further details will be displayed. So it's the same object attribute itself, the same fields. Now I have used different fields. Instead of object attribute, I use object number to just show that we can use different object parameters. So I try to use all the objects available there: object header, object status, object attribute, object number. So so you can just try to place different object fields uh, in this way as well. Okay. So you're able to I'm because if I do it, you'll have a different point of view, and to cover scenarios I'm trying to
Yeah, yeah, understand.
so because we have many controls, right? How to use
Okay.
different controls, or we can straight away, if we use also, how what's the difference, I'm just trying to show. So yesterday we try to use directly buttons. Now I try to place those buttons in different sections. So say, when do we use the other controls? So this is how the scenario. So we can same task I can use text control and I can achieve as well. Okay. But if you want to add like simple properties, you have to use lots of CSS to shrink this size, etc. So instead of that, if you use an object header or anything, it will have inbuilt property called icon, where you can map your image source, because it makes our life easy. And if you wanted to display, so in this case currency code, etc., you wanted to you know, automatically generate the data, so the whether it is paid or not paid, etc., using some indicators, whether if it's paid, not paid, etc., some indicator, if we have it, using formatter we can set the color. So these are like minor features, but using these particular fields, it will make our easy work all the more easy. We need not to actually do lots of code specifically to deal with these things. So these controls will have inbuilt features which will make our life easy. So all we are doing is we are just binding the which fields we want to bind, and based on the type of property we are trying to use, we are trying to use different controls. If it makes sense to use an icon, then we use a different control. So object marker, etc. If you want to use some numbers, we try to use something called object number. And if you have a hyperlink, etc., we use something called object identifier. So and what I'm trying to say is, you can choose by looking at the samples, you can choose which will be suitable for that particular property. In this case, headings, etc., I use plain, I did not use any hyperlink, but we can use hyperlink as well. And on click of image also, we can try to redirect it to some other page, etc., as well, right? So for the tab sections, so similarly we have different controls. So now what I'm trying to say is, icon tab bar is one such control, and these all are part of I can show you some other. So tab container is one such control. So if you see the tab container, so this is how the tabs will appear, and we can close each tab, and this is how looks. This is one control we can use, and other is icon tab bar, where icon tab bar is another control as well. So here you can again always come back to samples, try out that, look at the how many possible ways we can present the control, then make a choice. So how do you want to um, use it in your application? So in this case they have given one example, right? We can use it in this way where we can show all the products count, and when they're clicking on it, instead of filters, we can click on this tab and the tabular data is getting refined. All the overweight products, there are like out of 123 products, 53 are okay, and heavy objects, maybe the handling of shipping of them, we have to make more care, we have to specify where the here focus area is on the weight category. And in this case the lightweight categories, they are using green, and they're indicating with they're okay for regular shipments. And heavy objects, they have to take additional care. And these are like overweight is like beyond certain limit threshold, they have specified 15 kg, 23 kg. So the same data, more interactive way we can give. So out of 123 products, they want to see which all are heavy products and which are like regular products. So using a tab structure, they are able to filter the data. So we have seen a filtering of data using this approach, and it requires a pop-up and then selection, etc. It's not very interactive, whereas here if you see, it's very interactive, but we cannot apply for all the scenarios. So we have to make a choice when it makes ideal sense. And not only for this behavior, we can use it as a tabs as well. Like I said, if you see some other example in this case. So in this case, it is used plain as a tab. So for the first tab, we can provide, if you want to use a table, we can use a table. Some attachments we can use as attachments. If you want to add a notes, etc. Now I use this behavior in our application where um, instead of filtering data, I used for first tab to place a table, second tab to show the status, and I use this to provide some other table control altogether. So it comes with dual features, I mean to say. You can use it as a filter control, you can use it as a tab control, etc. You're getting right. So on click of it, what action we want to do, etc. So we can decide that way. And instead of icon, if you want only text and count, so you can just remove the icon and then it appears as a tab structure as well. This is one form. So text and count, and they call it as inline mode. Just difference is above you used to get the count, it will come on the horizontally. So that's the only difference. For if you set there a property called inline, if you enable it, it will come in the same horizontal line. And this gives us some like simple tabs, so very without any uh, details, etc. So simple tabs also we can use. So if you want to see why we use this is to effectively use the available space. So if you see here, if we use the same page, we cannot accommodate the people has to scroll too long to view all the tab sections. So instead, if you give this horizontal approach, all they have to do is in the same page without actually navigating or scrolling, in single click they can achieve see a lot more other information. So when you have too much of fields and too much of information, try to segregate in terms of groups, either using simple form like we use grid layout, right? So that is one way of grouping the data into different forms. Or other way is if you have very much huge data where you cannot accommodate in using simple forms, etc., then use a tab structure. In this case it's the same case. So at the layman, when they try to launch the application, we are trying to show them very simplistic data. So just they'll search for some order ID. So in this case they search for one order ID, and once they find the order ID, they'll select it, and they'll be able to see now complete details in this case. So they'll see the order details and lots of other information. Just they can, it is grouped into supplier information, what's the delivery status of this particular product, and whom for which customer it has to be shipped. So supplier information will see, okay, this is being assigned to this particular supplier. If there is an issue, anything, they can refer back to the required details of the supplier. And for tracking for purpose, they can look at the delivery status, and whom it is got shipped, etc. They can see which all products he has ordered, and this is the customer information, etc., supplier information, etc. So various information we can present it. So when we have lots of information, try to use forms, or if it is beyond forms, then try to use IconTabBar. So this is a go-to approach for using it. Okay. So now there are like some more way of forms, so different ways they show it. So it's the same. So let's see how to use this particular control here. So all we use is IconTabBar. So this is a uh, element we use for first. So if you want to have three tabs, all you have to put is an items aggregation. So control within a control, we call it as aggregation. Okay, IconTabBar has it will take time for you to get used to this, but um, if we have discussed about aggregations, it is fine. So now how do we know that within IconTabBar we have to add items, right? And how do we know we have to add inside a table columns, etc.? So control within a control. So it's like parent control. Unless IconTabBar is available, we cannot use items. So control within a control, if you're using it, such properties are called as aggregations. If you see, content is one such. So items is one aggregation. So for IconTabBar has one aggregation called items. Now we are using items. So items has again one more aggregation called IconTab, right? You're able to understand. So in this case, if we are to use items, within that we have to use IconTab. Okay, so IconTab is a property. So any control, if it shows under aggregation, those are nothing but parent and child relationship. So this we call it as classical inheritance, where you have a parent control, and if you want to use any of these aggregations, you have to define first the parent tag. So IconTabBar, within that we'll say items, etc., and we'll try to use those features out there. So in this case, items is an aggregation of IconTabBar. And if you want to have three structures, all you have to define is IconTab filter. And I'll just try to minimize this. So if you notice it, so this is all one line of code. Okay, I okay. So if you see here in the minimalistic way, I'm not sure if you're able to relate. Let me comment this code so that it will be relatable. I have removed this whole table control. Now you'll be able to relate. So if we see here, so we use something called items, and I wanted three tabs. So I added one IconTab filter, so closing brace, and then one more separator. So in order to separate each of which I'm using some icon, so the tabs, and then I use one more IconTab filter, and third one I have used one more IconTab filter. So we can use multiple IconTab filters. If you want to add, all you have to do is three tabs you have to add. Within this IconTab filter, whatever control you place, that would be the area where it will be displayed under this particular tab. Now this tab has certain fields. If you remove icon, it becomes just a simple tab. If you have an icon, it will appear as a uh, as a nice icon out of the SAP icons library. We can pick some icons out there and then we can use it. So for all the icons, we can fall back to tool section where you will have icon library. So this is the place called icon library. Okay. So this is icon explorer we have. So you'll find all the icons. So any icons, whatever you need for your use case, supplier, etc. So you can select SAP icons. So SAP icons is a section, and I think we are running out of time. I'll just close it. So product. We can search for any product, etc. So I have used product icons, etc. So you can search for any icons. So export icon, sort icon, etc. So you can search for these icons. So this is a place where you'll get all the icons. So standardly used icons, etc. We can find it from here. And for the icon tab bars as well, we are trying to use this icons. So in this case, if you select icons, so you can copy directly from here the snippet. So you can use this snippet directly in your uh, code. So in this case, for the icon tab bar for supplier, I'll try to go and use any, if they have to use this icon, I have to copy this and I'll replace it here this way. So now we can use this particular icon. So icon would be appearing it. And what are the color of the icon? So positive, it's a error message or warning, etc. You want to show. we can specify icon color and accordingly it will appear. So if I set the positive, it will come as green color, and else if not it will come as red color. I think we have removed that table code, that's the reason it's coming as empty. So likewise we can specify the icon tab properties for each section, and when I add this code back, so now within that icon tab bar we are trying to add the control. So when I start adding the control, so we have created different sections and we are trying to use individual controls in this case. Now we got this nice icon, whatever we want to have icon. So this is what I'm calling a separator. So to you can use nice indicator anything. So this is another, again, one more icon. All I did was we used an icon tab separate and we just added an icon. So you can use your own icon as such and to separate. So this is how we achieved different sections and we added it. Okay, what I'll do is tomorrow I think this is how we'll add features of M. So other features also we can use it from the samples M library. What all features are there? Each and every feature we can add it this way. So tomorrow what I'll do is I'll go in a different approach. For I'll walk you through as a project, and I'll take a use case and I'll try to discuss grid layout for functionalities, etc. So you can explore all the features of responsive table, and these are like generic features. So if you know this, no matter what are the use case may be, these are like general features. So you can implement all these features of mtable to any of your use case. They're like standard logics. So exporting a file, etc. Standard logics. Okay, I think I said I'll explain you spreadsheet latest one as well. Probably in grid table we can use that information. I'll try to use grid table, etc. where we can export. So this is one way to present the information, available information. Okay. Okay. So one of the important things what we learned is like limited screen space using different controls, how we can organize using different containers for view setting style or icon tab or etc. all allows object headers. These all attributes allows us to organize the data in a more way. I think I have done it very roughly. So if you, because if you spend 2-3 days of time, then we can organize the content in a more organized way. Right now I try to present as an running output. So if you organize it more effectively, so it looks more appealing. So it's all about using the right icons, right context, etc. So we'll try to take a use case and then try to provide one flow, then you'll able to relate all this functionality. Now we have seen as a technical point of view, but from the customer point of view, how are we going to add the features, etc. We'll try to understand as well. Any questions so far?
No.
You're able to follow, or am I going, it's something not you're not able to relate and it's completely going
No, I'm able to relate to it. Just that I need to find time to practice more.
okay.
Yeah.
Because my aim was, if I give you standard snippets, you can use this reference for any of your implementation projects. Okay, so these are like, you need not to worry about these are like the custom logics. These are like SAP provided framework, provided features. We just need to understand how it works. If you understand how it works, so like search, filtering, sorting, tables, how do we add, etc. So these are like standard logics. If you practice one example, that means you mastered it. So anytime you get this use case, you can nicely use this particular scenario example, and your 50% of your application work is done, right? So any beyond it, all we try to write is minimalistic approaches. Of course, I won't say minimalistic. If you see the code, it runs to around 5,000, 6,000 lines of code. Uh, so, but it evolves the application. Okay, so try to practice if you get time, and I'll try to create as a use case, and then we'll try to do the next exercise so that it will be more you can able to relate it. Okay, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, we'll meet tomorrow. Yeah, thank you.
Have a good day.
Yeah.